before we get started, anyone want to run for the hills? Hi, welcome back. It is not another reading with Lily. Well, it is sort of another reading with Lily, but I've got something a little different today. And I have some very hot tea here, so I will set that aside. I almost dumped it all over my keyboard when prepping for this, so as you can tell, I am extremely nervous because today is Beltane. Happy May Day to everybody who celebrates. Pagans and labor unionists and oh, hello. Chat's getting started early. So, hello, happy May Day. And tomorrow, I have a book releasing. Yep. You might not know, or you probably do because I refer to it endlessly, but not only do I read books, I also write them. And sometimes strangers even read my books too. But today it will not be a stranger reading a book. It will be me reading a little bit of tomorrow's freshly released book to you. But before we do that, we have to actually open the box. Okay, so I have two boxes here. They are full of author's copies. So chat's very excited about this. I'm very excited too. So they have been sitting over there in my office for a little while because I wanted to either hold off on opening them or open them on stream and share it with you. So, pair of scissors, cut the tape. Let's see what's in the top box. Oh my goodness. Oh, hardbacks. So the bottom box is probably paperbacks, but the top box, a hardback of Spring's Arcana, and this is the first time I'm seeing it. I mean, I've seen the advanced reader's copies before, but oh my goodness, look at that. Isn't it pretty? It's hardback and everything. It's like a real book. So yes, I started writing Spring's Arcana way back in lockdown. Thank you. I mean, people saying nice. So started writing this way back in lockdown, and it's a very wintry book. This one takes place in the absolute depths of winter, and the next book, The Salt Black Tree, it's a duology, so that means 2. The next book will be out in August. It's a complete series. You won't have to wait past then. So if you finish reading this and you get to the end and you want more, don't worry. Come August, it will be complete. There really is nothing like seeing your book baby for the first time. Thank you for sharing that with me. So, Spring's Arcana is about Nat Drozdova. And Nat Drozdova, well, I don't want to spoil too much for you, but she's on a quest. She's on a quest for something that can save her mother's life. Her mother really isn't a very nice person. So, but then a lot of the mothers in my books are not nice people. There are good mothers in my books, like She-Wolf and Cub. I happen to think the narrator there is a very good mother, but there are some less good mothers in my books, and Maria in this is, yeah. So let me see if I can find what I wanted to read to you. And I don't have it already marked like I would in a usual reading with Lily because I just opened this box and I'm seeing this book. Oh, look at that. Has the little... It's one thing to see it in PDF proof or paper proof, but it's another thing to hold the book in one's hands and touch it. And okay, that's vaguely uncomfortable, isn't it? Oh my goodness. So we're going to have to go near the end. And, oh yes, very near the end. Past the ranger, past the different hurts. here we are. Okay, so this is... So near the end of the book, Nat has gone through a lot. She's had a party in New York full of things that are not quite what they seem. She's been chased. She's seen somebody die in a convenience store. She's learning that her entire life has been a lie, and she's gamely carrying on. One of the things about this book is, it's not written for people who had happy childhoods and functioning family units. I mean, certainly you can read them, and if you can read it, like, I encourage you to read it. And if you had a great childhood with great parents and happiness and joy and all that, I'm very, very happy for you. Some of us didn't have that, and Nat, in particular, in this series, did not have it. But there comes a point in every quest where the quester has to go out on their own, and they face a challenge, even if there are other people helping. And this is one of Nat's challenges, is to ride a particular horse to a particular tree out in a very particular desert. And I talk a lot about how music informs my writing process. I very rarely do not have music play. Wait, that's a double negative. It is rare that I do not have music play. There we go. Editing in real time here. So I play music, and often a book will have a soundtrack. And I just made The Dead God's Heart soundtrack live this morning for people to go over on my blog and dig it up and look for it. So if you're interested in the music that informs my work, a lot of the time that's available to you. And this particular chapter, I listened to Katie Tunstall's Black Horse and the Cherry Tree over and over and over again. In fact, the chapter heading is Black Horse Cherry Tree, because the driving rhythm was something that I wanted, and there are a lot of little lyrical nuggets in there. Now my heart won't come back because I was so happy, and now I've got a hole for the world to see, which isn't Nat. But that would be giving away a lot if I told you it was. So I thought that I would read you a little bit of this, just to celebrate, just to see. I will probably not be analysing a lot because it's my own writing, and that feels kind of weird, but I may stop occasionally and tell you why I made a particular choice. So, Black Horse Cherry Tree from Spring's Arcana by yours truly. The handlebars stretched into reins, but were stiff metal at the same time. It was unsettling, feeling two such different things at once. There was the steady hum of an engine and the low, sweet wind in her ears, like riding her pink childhood bike. At the same time, there was a gallop, jarring until something deep in her bones woke, with a twitch, and the rhythm of the hoof fall and brief lift melted her into a steady, ever-changing equilibrium. It was just as wonderful as her voracious childhood reading said it would be. Black Beauty, Thunderhead, even the Black Stallion, not to mention the magazines at the library with red-jacketed girls in jodhpurs smiling as they clung to saddles. Don't be silly, Natchenka. No horses in the city. Oh, but she dreamed, and she'd longed, and once she was done with all this, maybe she could return here and learn. The black horse ran as if he felt her joy. He tossed his head and uncoiled in a leap over strings of barbed wire, holding the road back from prairie. Under an endless winter sky they galloped, clods spattering from those sharp, sharp hooves. The horizon blurred and green raced under iron shoes. The cold wind turned soft, then warm, and gnats' lungs burned as the sunlight changed, a flood of gold. The horse wheeled to the right, and there was a valley with bright icy blue water foam chuckling over rounded stones at its bottom. Willows reared on either side, their long winter-bare branches whipping past. One cracked close to her cheek, and Nat flinched. but the horse neighed like an engine revving and tensed before bulleting forward. He followed the river, leaning first to one side, then another to keep his rider from the clutching branches. And that was wrong. It was winter, but now the trees were green. A stony slope rose before them, the horse leap-climbing surefoot as a shaggy mountain goat, and now the prairie had turned green as well. Tiny dabs of blooming color spattered by too quickly to name the flowers they belonged to. Nat clung to the beast's back, bending low, breathing in a good scent of hay and simmering heat touched with the tang of wild fur and freedom. Strands of black mane brushed her cheeks, a rough caress, and the rhythm wasn't just under her now. It was in her breath, in her bones, in her pounding heart. Her tiny bipedal self melted into something bigger, becoming a single creature with 4 hooves, thundering as a massive heart churned, her vision flattening until there was a blind spot directly before her and the horizon widened on either side. A tail lifted high and proud, a sweet strong wind combing a long mane, her ears flicked, laid flat, her nose untangling 1,000 different shades of grass, brush, flowers, the breeze bringing tales from far away, where herds of her kind galloped for the joy of it, knowing no bridle but their own whims. The footing changed, hoof falls no longer sinking into sod but cushioned by dry, crumbling stuff. The prairie blurred, bleached and widening until there was nothing but rolling dun sand, the sky bright hot blue with a white coin hanging in its arms. Now the scents were harsher. The water dove deep, hiding, and there was no grazing. The specter of starvation loomed rib-sharp, an ancient memory in a creature who lived on grass and could find none. Hot sand tickled her nose, burned her deep-heaving lungs, and foam streaked the great beast's glossy black flanks. "I'm sorry," Nat thought. "Oh, I'm so sorry to bring you here." The horse arched his neck, slowing to a canter. He wasn't sorry. This was the road, this was the journey. Besides, there was a dark spot far away, a single break in the monotony of sand and glare. It hurt to separate. She wanted to stay in that thumping bass forever, a single mote on the back of a rocking sea. There was no isolation among the herd, just the thunder of running and the sudden terror of predator things, with sharp white teeth and cruel slashing claws, the fear of a lightning crack when storms swept the grasslands. And over it all was the deep, warm comfort of others like her, pressed flank to heaving flank. She didn't want to be lonely again. Now the air was hot, and every step muffled in wind-rippled sand. Nat straightened, regretful, and shaded her eyes with one aching hand. There was a thin pressure stripe across her palm. Not quite a cut, but a deep indentation. The horse shook his massive head again, and she hurried to clasp the reins once more. He turned slightly, approaching the shadow in a curve rather than head-on, and after a short while of jog-trot she realized it was a tree. A cherry tree, to be precise, its blossom-laden branches raised in heavy defiance of this sudden desert and its blurring, devouring heat. It was the only shade around, and the horse smelled the deep mineral tang of water. Or did she? Impossible to decide. He slowed to a walk. How long had she clung to his back? There was no telling. The cherry tree shadowed a small, curved stone wall. No, it was something else, a well hiding in the liquid, lacy shade. Pale blossoms moved gently, releasing tiny petals. The horse melted underneath her until a motorcycle's tires dug into sand, and he plunged into relief under the branches. The well was a ramshackle affair, its red-shingled roof slightly tilted off true. A winch, probably rusted into immobility, stuck drunkenly from one side, and dried moss clung between the stacked grey stones. The motorcycle bumped to a stop and sagged on its springs. They had arrived. The idea of being in a herd, of melding with a horse that's also a motorcycle because he's Ranger's mount, and Ranger is a god of cowboys. that idea has always stuck with me. You know, horses are prey animals, so they really like being in a herd. They find a great deal of comfort in it. And outrunning on the plains, you know, when I lived in Wyoming, one of the things I used to do is wait for thunderstorms and then go running through the grass. I was very young, and this may sound extremely dangerous, and it is. I do not recommend it. Do not be like me. Do not do this. At the same time, it was safer than home, and I gained a great deal of pleasure from it. So the running and the rhythm and the hoof fall, and maybe you could hear some of the rhythm in that. It's different when you're reading it versus breath, but I do take breath breaks in the sentences. So that was a little bit of Spring's Arcana. Oh, goodness. Maybe I should read you a little bit more. Oh, goodness. And this is the, sorry. I'm very, very excited to have my book in my hands and in hardback too. This is a thing for a writer, you know, when you're published in hardback. Ooh. So anyway, that was a little bit of the gallop in Spring's Arcana, where Nat Drozdova goes, oh no, says, they're not going to stop me if I decide to read a bit more. Well, that was what I wanted to read, but let me look through here and see a little bit more. Oh, no, I shouldn't read you that. That would give entirely too much away. Oh, that would give too much away, too. Oh, that would definitely give too much away. No, I don't. I think I'll let you discover it on your own, because I just had planned to read that one bit, and it feels kind of weird to be doing that. So anyway, tomorrow Spring's Arcana comes out. I should probably stay toward the front. Well, maybe I should. Maybe I'll read you the beginning. All right. You've talked me into it. I'll read you a little bit at the beginning. So we'll start with Other Than Winter. The entire city was full of dirty, ice-whipped slush after the first hard freeze. It had only reluctantly warmed enough for snow. A whistling, iron-cold wind poured down both the Hudson and East Rivers, slicing between feathery falling flakes. I do like alliteration. Thanksgiving was over, for what it was worth, Christmas lights blooming everywhere, and it was hard to believe anything other than winter had ever existed. The bus was a blue and white metal beast wallowing up the slight incline of Pastis Hill on a cloud of diesel smoke. The subway was warmer, but wasn't worth the stairs involved for this part of the trip. Nat Drozdova's throat ached, her nose was full, and her eyes watered. She could claim it was the cold, or the persistent creeping fingers of car exhaust slithering from street level to irritate tender membranes. Crying on the 2 p.m. downtown special was what Mom would call, "Your silliness, Natchenka, now stop it." It was standing room only. The vehicle swayed, and she was almost thrown onto a thin, sour-faced businessman who had forgotten to bring his tie back over his shoulder after lunch. He'd also had more than one martini, if the simmering alcohol fume was any indication, and his wingtips were going to be slush-soaked by the time he got back to the office. Well, everyone had problems in this world, as Uncle Leo grimly intoned at the slightest provocation. Nat wiped her cheeks, a sting of woolen glove fingers against already abraded skin, and set her chin. A baby fretted somewhere along the bus's flexing, swaying length. A crop of wet, croupy coughs blossomed on either side. Nat hung onto the pole, trying not to bump the businessman again, and closed her eyes. Just a moment. That's all she wanted. A single breath worth of rest. The darkness behind her lids was terrifying, so her eyes flew open again, filling her head with a regular Wednesday afternoon full of regular people. except her surroundings lasted only a few seconds before melding into a familiar pale pink hospice room, holding softly beeping machines, the reek of disinfectant, and her mother's gaunt face, now graying hair neatly braided and resting against a sanitized pillowcase. It was the light, Nat decided. An echo of fluorescent hospital tubes ran down the bus's throat like streptococcal stripes, their pitiless glare showing every pockmark, every pimple, every stray hair, every scrape and scuff and loose thread, just like it showed Mom's veins, blue and branching, or the papery skin under her chin. "I'm too young to look this way," Mom had said mournfully during her last visit, and Nat had to agree. She also had to keep blinking, everything blurred because her eyes were full of brimming hot water yet again. The bus crested past us, skyscraper valleys swallowed a wheeled aluminium tube pill. Oh, it's an American, it's not aluminium. It's aluminum. Remember the copy editor and we didn't have a set to about it, but the copy editor said, yeah, really, we're in the US. And I'm like, yes we are, aren't we? Snow whirled past the window as she counted the streets. Neiman, the funny curve of Totzer, the park blocks between Crane and Gallus, a stone's throw from Times Square, full of wet green tinged with ice-pale lacework. If the contraption jerked again, she'd be thrown onto two private schoolboys with their shoulders and temples almost touching as they bent over a game, unaware of anything other than pixels on a handheld screen. The stoplight went on with a soft chime. Nat was thankfully not tossed into the laps of strangers, and she began the laborious process of elbowing towards a door. They were saying at least 3 inches of snow, but Nat rolled the air across her tongue the way Leo had told her many winters ago and decided there was going to be more. Quite a bit more, in fact, and that was part of why she was downtown today, even though her shoes would fill with slush melt and her calves would freeze almost solid. It happened so fast, too. One moment she was sitting at her cubicle desk in Brooklyn, the phone jangling, coffee solidifying into syrup at the bottom of its pot, one of the salesmen whistling jingle bells, and another in the depths of the office yelling about quarterly figures. Then she was outside, breathing deeply against the chill, the business card in her wallet weighing down her purse like a scoop of compressed matter, dragging everything into the heart of a brand new black hole. Maybe they wouldn't even notice she was gone. Christ knew she felt pleasantly invisible most days, except when Bob, his new toupee was the exact color of brown shoe polish, had a new idea and someone had to wrangle him out of it. Middle managers inevitably rose to the level of their incompetence, and he was a shining example who might even make corporate one of these days. The bus finished... Let's take that line again, shall we? The bus finished disgorging fellow travelers and heaved away. Nat turned up the collar of her navy wool peacoat and set off too, her office flats crunching scattered de-icer pellets. Gallus and Third was the address on the card. Heavy ivory stock, deeply pressed letters, blacker than ink should be, the corners crisp, no matter how long it sat in Nat's wallet, glaring at her each time she paid for coffee or groceries or anything else. "Did you see her yet? Do you have an appointment?" The tremor in Mom's voice, the impatience disguised as helplessness. Nat tilted her head back while matching the speed of sidewalk traffic, more to get the tears to crawl back into their holes than to gaze at skyscrapers, their tops lost in billowing white as the sky scattered tiny frozen pellets struggling to turn into snow. When her chin came back down to save her fool ass from skidding off de-icer and into the street, the building was right there. She stopped for a moment, ignoring both the hiss of a man in a dun-colored trench coat, who had to do some fancy footwork to get around her, and a cacophony of horns from Gallus Street, where the slush was busy snarling end-of-lunch traffic, with a side of fender benders, and screaming out windows that should have been rolled up to keep the heat trapped. People would waste even precious resources to yell obscenities out a window. It was a fact of human nature. Tiny ice flakes swirled on the back of a whipping wind, and maybe it was only the vagaries of air moving between man-made concrete cliffs, turning the white curtain into a tornado before neatly flicking it wide open as a sheet to hit the other side of Gallus Street and the Vogue Mutual Building, a high-thrusting needle with a granite-sheathed base. The Vogue had blinking multicolored lights in deference to the season. There was even a tree in its foyer, a multicolored migraine gleam through bright windows. The Mora Pestle Memorial Tower, on the other hand, was an unornamented, black-mirrored building, its walls curving like the architect hated even the idea of a straight line. It seemed to squat even though it challenged its neighbors for height, and the concrete forum park set before it was always curiously free of beggars and buskers. Maybe it was the statues. Whoever did the art installation had some weird ideas about human anatomy, and the host of copper and stone figures in various attitudes dotted around Pestle Square, as the sign between two forlorn, winter-naked bushes proclaimed it, with more hopefulness than declarative thunder, were tinged with frost, beginning to grow shaggy white winter coats as the snow decided to quit fucking around and get its afternoon work started. "Did you see her yet?" Mom kept asking. "Not hello and forget how are you." "I don't want to," Nat muttered. It was one thing to endure Mom's disappointment each time, but if Nat got the brush off here and trudged into Mom's hospice room during visiting hours tomorrow to report not just a lack of appointment but a complete failure to even get in the door, what would happen? Mom had already gone so far downhill over the past couple months. It was silly to think Maria Drozdova's heart would finally break and the rest of her might not be far behind, wasn't it? "Your imagination, Natchenka." A wet, invisible fingertip touched her nape. Her hair was up in its usual office-friendly twist. Letting it down would be fractionally warmer, but only until it was soaked through. She had no hat, her legs were already cold despite black wool tights, and her shoes were never going to be the same. Digging out the card to check it once more would be a waste of time. Even thinking about it called up the spare, elegant words on the front and the purple ink writing on the back. YAGA, Fine Arts and Antiques, Import-Export, Mora Pestle Memorial Tower. No phone number, no email, just that beautiful, chilling fountain pen writing on the reverse. "Let her in," it said. Well, maybe they would. Or maybe she could stand out here and freeze to death, just another statue in a park not even the homeless liked, despite its benches lacking the hard, hurtful metal studs designed to keep them from sleeping. The entire world was unfair, and her own problems less than a speck of comparative dust. Nat Drozdova shook her head, couldn't hitch her purse strap higher on her shoulder because it was strapped under her coat for safekeeping, and took off across Pestle Square, threading between the statues. She was very, very glad that despite her lifelong overactive imagination, none of them looked like they were about to move. So that was the first chapter. I kind of did it backwards, didn't I? Something near the end first and then the first chapter. Now you may have noticed in the first chapter, and since you're here I'll tell you, a few names. There's Niemann Street, Todzer, Tod, the German word for death. There's Crane and Gallus Street. Gallus is, of course, the word for chicken, and Baba Yaga's hut always has chicken feet. So Gallus Street, it's kind of Baba's little joke to have her domicile on Gallus Street. Now, the Mora Pestle Memorial Building, it's all rounded. It's black, of course, like the architect hates the idea of a straight line, but that's because it's also Baba Yaga's traveling house. You know, remember that she travels in a giant mortar and she uses a pestle to stir and steer. So Mora Pestle is kind of my own little joke. Now, you may also have noticed that it's right across the street from the Vogue building, Chernivog, of course. And the Vogue building is very, very straight and tall and already has a Christmas tree there. And Baba Yaga does not care for such things, so her building is otherwise. So Nat Drozdova has a business card, and she has a quest from her dying mother, go to this place, talk to this woman, go talk to her. Have you gone yet? Have you gone yet? Go. And so Nat does. And the consequences are wide-ranging and far-reaching. So that's just a few of the little things. And oh, did you see the statues? So there's a scene a little bit later where you find out what the statues are, and you find out that Nat isn't really, her imagination is not inaccurate. Let's put it that way. So, and if that gives you a little shiver down your back, good, because I was kind of terrified when I wrote it. So, I am extremely nervous for tomorrow's release. You would think that 70-plus novels, I would not be nervous that this would be old hat, but it never is. It's never old hat. It's always your heart thumps and your breath is short. And, I might almost prefer riding on a black horse that's almost also a motorcycle through a desert that shouldn't exist, but I know what the horse is, and it's really not anything I'd ever want to ride. And no, I haven't said too much. So I just wanted to hop on a little bit today, read you a little bit, open that box of author's copies, and now I have seen an actual copy of my book that is going to release tomorrow. And even though I'm very nervous, it's a heck of a feeling. And my tea is cooled to absolutely the perfect drinkable temperature. So I will say, take a deep breath. We've got the whole week ahead of us. Spring's Arcana comes out tomorrow. If you read it, I hope you like it. Thank you for saying congratulations. Thank you very much. I'm glad you decided to be here with me. There's also a launch event done by Fountain Books tomorrow. If you drop by my website, there are plenty of places to sign up. So I will be talking about this book, this series, with my friend Curtis Chen, who you should also read his kangaroo books. They're amazing. Maybe I'll do a reading with Lily with one of his books. I think that would be great. So, somebody says their book arrives in the mail tomorrow. Oh, I'm very excited too. Thank you very much. I hope you like it. I recognized your username. Let me know what you think about it. And drop me a line. Let me know what you think of the book. So we have the whole week ahead of us. I'm going to go back to proofing PDF proofs for a completely different series. I have to shift gears from this to Tolkien Viking werewolves. Maybe when that one comes out, I'll still be streaming and I'll read you a little bit of that too. But anyway, have a great week. I will see you again on Friday for another reading with Lily. Remember to wear your masks because we're not out of this yet. We need to take care of each other because God knows nobody else is going to. And I will bid you a pleasant adieu. Thank you very much for coming by. Enjoyed having you here. Ta-ta.